All right, folks, welcome to another edition of reviewing the album. And seems like we're always reviewing this album for some reason, for some reason or another.
Yeah.
Mr. Tom Jennings, welcome once again. We're going to talk "Circling from Above," which is our 17th Styx studio album. We're not counting Big Bang because that was a cover album, Big
hmm
Bang Theory. But yeah, just give me a quick rundown on what you thought of the album. I know you got a chance to talk to one of the collaborators and producers of the album and kind of fill us in on everything.
I think he's the only producer, Will Ivankovic, which I've been pronouncing it incorrectly all these years. Ivankovic. I think being from the Buffalo area, you have a lot of Polish names, and that's how you pronounce the CH at the end. But yeah, there's an interview on my YouTube channel, Tuning In with Thom Jennings, Thom. But initial impressions, really impressed. I mean, this I consider part of a trilogy. Let's just call it what it is. And it's we have the mission, Crash of the Crown, and now Circling from Above, the three records that have come out since, if off the top of my head, I believe it's 2017 when the mission came out, and kind of very similar in terms thematically. They're all amazingly enough concept albums, which is sort of ironic because the narrative goes that Kilroy was here was sort of the beginning and the end, but Styx has always had kind of a loose concept. I mean, Rockin' or Paradise Theater was a bit of a loose concept. Certainly, Pieces of Eight and Grand Illusion, maybe not pure concept albums in the purest form like a Lamb Lies Down on Broadway or Tommy or The Wall, but anyhow. Um, so this particular record, I kind of expected it to be along those lines, but honestly, it was a pleasant surprise. I think this is one of their most diverse records in years. It's very much a reflection of the current lineup. It still has a lot of those Styx elements that fans have come to expect with regard to choruses and kind of song structure. It feels a very prog, and yet it has a real interesting pop sensibility. There's a lot of influences that you can hear throughout the recording. And overall, I thought it was probably their strongest effort since, well, definitely the best record in the 21st century, and probably the best, I would say, album with a Styx label on it since definitely since Edge of the Century, but more likely probably the best since I would say Paradise Theater.
Yeah, Paradise Theater. Yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt. No doubt. Yeah. Yeah, so this album, features the first recorded appearance of Terry Gowan on bass. What'd you think of his performance on the album?
Very impressed. And this is kind of a weird thing to say because you got Ricky Phillips, who's just a great bass player. And if you've seen Styx when Ricky was, if you did get a chance to see Styx when Ricky was the bass player, you could appreciate very different stylistically than Chuck Panazzo. And he's really cool what he does. Very much a rock bassist. Now with Terry Gowan, there's a couple of things that are actually kind of neat in that it's the first time since Kilroy was here that they've had a pair of brothers on the record. John Panazzo unfortunately passed away, so John and Chuck were two of the founding members. Now we have Lawrence and his brother Terry Gowan on a record, which I think in kind of that historic heritage sense, I like how that kind of ties together back a little bit of the Styx history and also brings them up to date. But just in terms of performance, it just very smart. I feel like Terry's bass playing is a little bit closer to Chuck's in terms of his approach, and I was really impressed by the diversity. But I think a lot of that comes from the fact that, first of all, he's played with Todd Suckerman because he's part of Lawrence Gowan's solo band, and Todd is as well. So there's a familiarity in terms of the rhythm section, and it really comes through on the
Hmm.
on the record. I mean, these guys have an intimate knowledge of each other musically, and let's be honest, the rhythm section is the unheralded piece of a record that when it ain't working, then the rest of it can fall apart. So I think that the rhythm section, both Todd's performance and Terry's performance, are crucial to making this album go from maybe a 7 to a 9. And those two numbers are pretty big.
Yeah, and the interesting way they went about releasing this was kind of interesting as well. I like how they released the CD on their website, and also
Yep.
they had it made available at the shows, but you can't get it on the streaming platforms yet. And they
Yep.
have recently
Yep.
released the album as well too, the LP, the vinyl.
Yeah, it's a little tougher to get here. The CD too that came out on Talk Shop Live kind of dropped, and then you were able to get a signed copy. And I believe that there's the signed copies are available at the shows as well of the CDs. And then I have the vinyl as well, which was I think exclusively through the Sound of Vinyl. I can't remember who I purchased it from. It's very nice vinyl packaging. As you can see, it's gatefold. I
Oh
mean,
wow.
good old fashioned, just a solid record. um, Printed sleeve, with the lyrics. I mean, this is just some old school stuff in terms of the packaging. And if you look at the CD, it's interesting too because it'll say in the booklet in the CD, and the CD comes with the booklet. So they didn't spare any expense. But what's cool is that they actually put on the CD booklet side one and side two to delineate the sides, which makes it feel again more like a record instead of just a digital streaming group of songs.
Yeah. And the
Well thought out is what I'm basically trying to say.
and it was released on Universal Music. That's the label they've been on, so it's a
Mm-hmm.
big label. And it's interesting how the label took the chance on going around, this way of releasing it. I'm dying to see, how much they're selling of this album at the shows because you figure it's sad that they only got a chance to play like one song during the show, but this album is definitely highly recommended. I know you were talking about you mentioned it in previous occasions when I had a chance to talk to you about some of these songs. Give me what you feel is the true highlight on this album.
Oh, I mean, there's lots. My favorite song on here is "Forgive." It's a Tommy Shaw does the lead vocals on it. It's just phenomenal. It just jumps off. But this is a listening experience, and I think what's nice is the resurgence of vinyl has created opportunities for artists to create albums again, as opposed to songs, and it's different. It's different. I mean, if when an album works, it works. They all kind of come together, and I think Styx did a great job with The Mission and with Crash of the Crown, but it really just all seemed to come together with this perfect storm for this one. It's just such a great listen. There's a ton of different influences, and the lead single "Build and Destroy," which is the one that they're performing live. When I first heard it, I liked it. I was like, oh, that's okay. But the album opens up with the title cut circling from above, and that goes into "Build and Destroy," and it
Hmm.
actually makes "Build and Destroy" make more sense. It sounds better as a two-part song. It's weird. Like it almost, even though "Build and Destroy" works as its own thing, when you put those two together, it's just infinitely better. Kind of like remember "Rockin' the Paradise." You know how that you had that little what was it, AD 1925 or
Hmm.
whatever, that went into rock. I mean, that you could play "Rockin' the Paradise" without that part, but it was to me that's just a part of the song.
Yeah, it was a great build up to lead into it. Awesome,
Sure, yeah.
definitely. And also, a first on this album is the Will gets to sing a couple songs on the album.
Mm-hmm.
What was your take on his songs that he sings on, and were you surprised to see him? I was surprised when I heard it. I go, this isn't one of the guys I remember. So obviously, it does stick out the Will's songs on the album when you listen to it.
Yeah, there's always a challenge there, especially when you have a band like Styx that has such a. We talked about their history. Their the peak of their career was the A&M years. From Equinox to Kilroy, and you can even kind of drill that down to maybe Grand Illusion through Cornerstone, if you're really talking about when they were just on top of the world. So you're used to a certain group of voices. Over the
Mhm.
years, there's been JC John Strelowski, who sang some songs, but he's not somebody that people necessarily associate with, in terms of his voice. JY, in the early days, sang a lot of songs, and then kind of dropped off into this. Well, he sings one or two here or there, which he appears on this record as well. So then now we have this additional voice, and I think it's probably the most significant additional voice since maybe Glenn Burtnick, but then again, it fits. I feel to some degree with Glenn. Glenn's voice was so distinct that it stood out, and you heard it, and it was something new, and it was something exciting on Edge of the Century. And Glenn did
Mhm.
some great work on that record. In this record, it's weird because I feel like Will's voice fits in a lot better. Like it's just you kind of don't notice it. You know what I mean? It's not one of those things where you go, "Well, that's weird. What's that voice coming from?" In fact, the first time I ran through the CD, I was thinking, "Is that Lawrence singing? Is that Tommy going through a vocal effect? Like, what is it?" So it really fits in quite well. He's a good singer. I mean, he was in a band before that whose name escapes me. It's like the American Garage or something like. Do you remember what the name of the old band that Will was in?
I don't remember off
I
the
don't know.
top of my
But
head.
he handled lead singer duties and that. I mean, I should know it because I went back and pulled it up on Spotify and listened to that. I was like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, this guy's a really good singer. But yeah, no, I thought it worked out. Again, when Lawrence Gowan, when he made his first debut, when he handled lead the first time, I think it was people were familiar with his voice, at least around where you and I live, because we're so close to Canada, that it wasn't a huge shock to the system. And vocally, Lawrence's approach is, it's
Yeah.
it's not. People say, "Oh, he doesn't sound like Dennis DeYoung." He's not supposed to sound like Dennis DeYoung. He sounds like Lawrence Gowan, but having a Lawrence Gowan replace a Dennis DeYoung was a lot less of a shock than Glenn Burtnick replacing Tommy Shaw. I guess that's kind of the way that I can put it. And in the case of Will, he's not replacing anybody. He's just an additional voice, which I think just adds another. I think it adds another tool in the
Another
tool belt, which
dimension.
is
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we were all familiar with Gowan by the time they recorded Cyclorama because he was already doing like, man, probably like 800 shows under his belt by the time we got to hear him actually on a Styx record.
Right.
Because that was 2003. They started touring 99, so, you know, definitely
Yeah, but
more
let's
familiar.
face it. Brave New World and Cyclorama were both very disjointed records. They just never. There's just something about them that just feels incomplete. It feels missing. It does. The flow isn't quite there. Good records, not great records. That's the best way I could put it. I think I would put this in a category of great record. This is a great record. It really is.
Yeah, so I was looking at the track list here, thinking, Michigan. I mean, I just love that song. It reached out and grabbed me right away. King of Love was obviously
So,
the one that JY gets the lead vocals on for a little bit there. Gowan, Everyone Raise a Glass, kind of takes me back to the Fields of the Brave type from Cyclorama there. A lot of it was like a celebratory song there. What do you think of the closer? Only You Can Decide.
I mean, it said the tracking on this particular record is part of the experience. You could if you reshuffled these songs, I don't know that the record would feel as complete and as strong. So it is. I mean, it's an incredible closer. I think there's a lot of Styx has kind of been known throughout their career for doing some social commentary. I think there's some underlying social commentary here with regard to, from what I could tell at the surface without really doing a deep dive into lyrics, that it is, talking about the threat of technology in the world today. Um, and maybe, that final closing song, just even in terms of the structure, but maybe the message
Mhm.
itself is kind of a warning to the world. But I don't know. We've been hearing that warning since 1984. When the world was going to be overtaken by technology, which
I'm gonna,
you know,
yeah, I'm gonna leave you with this. Is this the last record we ever get from Styx?
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't see it happening. I mean, a lot of it. I mean, I'm going to make up. I'm going to predict that probably JY will retire from touring, and the band will continue on. I mean, they've been able to do some shows without JY, and maybe even Chuck too. I don't know. I mean, Chuck has been a part-time member for a while. So, but really, if you look at the core of the band, I mean, Tommy, I think Tommy, did he just turn 70 or he's got to be getting close? But either way, Tommy's still in good shape. I mean, he's got another seven to 10 years touring in him easily. Todd, Lawrence, those the rest of the guys, they're all Terry, they're all younger. I mean, they could certainly do more. I mean, who knows? I mean, there was that one configuration. Well, I guess if I was going to compare it to somebody, I'd think about somebody like Kansas. Kansas had some significant lineup changes, just like Styx did, and they're down to I don't even know if they have a original member. I think maybe the guitarist Rich Williams is the last one standing, but they're still putting out music. They're still
Yep.
putting out really good records. And under the Kansas name, is it the same Kansas that we grew up with as kids? No, but if I go see the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra, the third violin player's probably not the guy that I saw performing in front of the fireworks in July 4th, 1976 either. And these bands change. Glenn Miller Orchestra is still touring. We know Glenn isn't touring with them anymore, especially since he died. But I think Yes Too is another one that's proven that you can continue on and still record music on with a particular band name. We've got Asia that's coming out with a record with basically one original member left, which is Jeff Downs. So the short answer is no. I don't think this is the last one. I think we could almost bet we could safely bet on at least one more. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw two or three more. Part of that may have to do with the economics of the music industry. Who knows what's going to happen with the economics? I think it was smart for them to change to do it the way they did. In that,
Hmm.
if you sell the album exclusively when you're already out on tour, it creates a scarcity. It's the only place you can get it. That
Yep.
probably helped the sales. They know it's a strong enough album that anybody that buys it basically, you know, sight unseen or unheard, they're not going to be disappointed. It's a great record. It's worth it, honestly.
All right. Very good. Appreciate your take on it. And yeah, definitely in my book, it's also a very, very good album. Not sure where I'd actually rank it at this point in time, but I would say I like it better than the previous album, Crash of the Crown. I might still like the Mission, maybe just a smidge more. That's just my take on it, but they all fall like right near each other. That is definitely for sure. And it's definitely a solid effort all the way around, and at this late into a career, you usually don't see bands putting out albums this strong if they are making albums at all. So for them to come out with three of them in a row like this, definitely a feather in the cap.
It's a catch 22. I think it depends on whether if you're able to listen to a record and not completely frame it against the classic era lineup. This isn't your 1977 Styx. This is 2025 Styx. And there's been a couple lineup changes even in the last few years. You got a new
All
bass
right.
player, and now you've got an additional member as well.
Yep.
So if you judge it just as a record and you call the group the Nothings, it's a great record. But it does have that Styx label on it, so there's a certain expectation. I think it lives up to that
Hmm.
expectation for most fans. There's going to be some fans that don't see this current lineup as the legitimate Styx, which I think if you fall into that category, that's pretty sad because great record's a great record. And unfortunately, again, a lot of times these bands are just forced to continue to use these names because that's the only way fans will pay attention to them, even if they do make a great record. But the Styx also doesn't have to have the pressure of that they had when they were on A&M Records. You got to put an album every year. I mean, that's what's mind blowing. If you think about that run from Grand Illusion through Kilroy, that was over the course of 4 or 5 years. I mean, that's mind blowing. That was the peak of their artistry. But yes, I believe that these last three records certainly are something that the band should be proud of. They feel cohesive thematically.
Hmm.
They all work together. I think this is much stronger than the Mission. I'll disagree with you on that, and that's saying a lot because the Mission was a very good record. But yeah,
All right, there you have it. So you finally we were going to have our video out there for everybody to see. Thank you for waiting for our for the best review. You saw the rest. Now you're going to see the best. All right, Tom, as always, thank you for your time, and we'll see you on another episode of in the future.
you got it.